The question was, what do you think if the European Commission, if they come out with a winter package, will they deliver on the common internal European market or not? And please, let's start with you.
Sorry for interrupting the fluent agenda of the conference. If we speak about the common market, or whatever name you would put to it, we have heard many of those. Common power market, you know, the energy union, the power-only market, and other nice big names. All of them had some sort of challenge towards implementation. I'm not very experienced in energy, but since I started some years ago, the promise was that there will be a single European power market by 2014. Then the 2014 came and the promise just disappeared. And no one explained why it didn't happen. But then the other promise came up, which was the energy union. And now maybe the other promise is being brought up, which is a power-only market or a common capacity market structure. So I think it's quite difficult to have implementation, 100% implementation assured on the European level, because there is too much regional, and I would say not even regional, but very significant and strong national interest. And it was even today said that it is hard to say, I think it was Ando who said that it is hard to explain your people that you will be relying on someone else. And you know, I'll just give you a very brief story from today's news in Lithuania. Our outgoing minister just announced his guidelines or the main ideas for the new energy strategy, which has been discussed for 4 years now. And the main idea is that despite the regional market integration, which we welcome, we still need to make sure that we have sufficient generation locally to satisfy 100% of our consumption. So this is a good example of a country which was always very proactive in a more European, more regional, more integrated. However, when it comes to, so to say, real life, suddenly the national takes over.
So basically, if we use the terminology of WEC, and we have the jazz, the symphony, and the hard rock, what you are saying is that in Lithuania, politicians are talking about wanting a jazz word, but acting in a word of hard rock.
It is like that, and I mean, I'm not proud to say that, but even attitude towards a Baltic market, which has, in my view, gone a very strong way of integration, with Nord Pool coming here, with interconnections to Finland and to Sweden and to Poland. So it has been working very strongly towards the common market. BEMIP, for instance, is the only success probably of market integration physically. Still, the country thinks that okay, we need to make sure that we are good on our own.
Okay. Hando, Dalius was rather pessimistic about the possibility of having this single European market thanks to the winter package. What do you think? Can we hope to get something from the winter package?
Yeah, I think that first of all, this is my personal problem that I want to have everything due fast, so that if looking back from where we are coming, then we should be quite happy what we have done. And if we think that maybe 5 years ago or 6 years ago, nobody, at least here, could imagine that power is a product freely traded and having a reference price every hour, and we can buy futures and PTRs what we have on the borders. Of course, we want more. We want more, but you say that what we have achieved is quite remarkable. So same process is going on the gas at the moment to establish a gas market. You have interconnections and so on, so that at some point we have to celebrate this as well, to say that we have done something well. But I took a time, I was reading through the winter package, and I think that for me, this was nothing like a fundamentally new on this winter package. And I would say that this winter package doesn't disturb us to do things right even today without the winter package. This is more like changing the mentality, and really to change the mentality from the hard rock scenario to modern SaaS scenario if we really want to make things in a different way. But we also have to understand why we are rather like a hard rock players, because we are coming from the regulated power market. We are coming from the regulated energy market, and many of those policymakers, they don't trust markets. They think that they say, okay, we have markets, we have energy markets, but we need to remain in control over this market, because otherwise this market will give us reference which is unpredictable. But what we have seen, the oil markets, price fluctuations, not 30%, but 3 times in 1 year. Yeah, this is hard to handle, but this is the market. So if we want really the markets, then we need to be ready for whatever market gives us, and market is function of demand and offering. This is not a combination of demand, offering, and policies. This should be function of demand and offering.
Okay, now let's move on to Ingrid. Hando just said that ideally we want a market that is a function of demand and offering. But would you say that right now the Nord Pool market is that, or do you see that we still have too much of the policy in the market?
For Nord Pool, what I see firstly is really to couple those rocking systems. And this is what we are doing today and also in future. So I think for us, the policy we are following is very okay. So I have only one concern regarding this winter package, and if we go to the regional developments more, then my message is that please just don't kill the market. Because what I see is that there might be, I'm not sure, but there might be temptation to take off from the market the generation. And what is really important for our region, Nordic Baltic, is the interconnection capacities. So I really would like to keep as it is today. We can survive also with this winter package as well.
Okay. I have another question for you. Before we had a discussion with Hando and with Christoph Frey, and also with some other people about the electricity price in the coming months. We see that the coal price is going up. We have predictions of a cold winter coming. There is very little water in the hydro reservoirs. And to me, it seems like we will get quite high electricity prices. And I would say that this helps politicians to kill the market. Or am I wrong?
First of all, Nord Pool is not predicting the prices. If you would like to see the future prices, please look the Nasdaq OMX commodities, etc. So this, I unfortunately can't help you with those. But let's see. We don't know exactly. We have had many winters now where the prices were extremely low. This is very good consumers, but what does it mean for generators? In Nord Pool always we have 2 players, generators and also consumers. So we can't say is it good or bad, but what is important is that in long term we also have the generation which we can sell. So this is important.
Okay, let's move on to Germany. Stefan, you are from one of the biggest utilities in Europe, one of the richest ones. We just spoke with you about that E.ON is so rich that they can take a loss of 1 billion euros a month and still not care. And so what are your views on the future of power markets, and can this continue that the big utilities are not making money, that they are taking on huge losses?
No, of course not, because I mean, at some stage in time, the money is burned away, and then we have to think about some new ways to earn some money. So this is, of course, not a sustainable business model. So we're also trying to look at different solutions. I mean, definitely, we have to be aware that the market is really changing dramatically within the European situation. There's a strong battle between national and European solutions. I mean, we see on the one hand side the EU ETS, which is really a wonderful instrument. But we also see several member states coming up with the opinion that there's some room for improvement for the EU ETS, and so they're introducing some kind of coal phase-out regulation or some kind of minimum taxes and something else. Of course, everybody speaks about security of supply. You also mentioned it. There's room for improvement and for cooperation for security of supply. On the other hand, each national government exactly feels when there's a problem with security of supply, they will be the first to be accused. And so they try to find some kind of solutions on their own. So these are some driving forces that we see where we have the interplay between national and European solutions. I think we are now in the stage of time where we also see a third party coming in this whole debate, and this will be the consumer, the customer, because we see that there's more and more decentralized generation, especially in Germany with a lot of PV that is coming on. We also see some developments on the storage, that is, people are becoming more and more independent of any kind of grid. And this might lead in the end to some situation where security of supply is less a national or a regional problem or challenge, but it's more some kind of subnational and rather local challenge that will be met. I think also market-wise we will see a major change in the structure of the market. Firstly, because of these renewables that will enter the market, we will see a shift from intraday, from day ahead to intraday trading. That is, the intraday balancing will become much more important than it is nowadays. It will really become the driving force. If you have a lot of zero marginal cost plants, the intraday market, the day ahead market is more or less meaningless, unfortunately. And the intraday market will become much more important. Secondly, we might also see, to come back to the WEC scenarios, some kind of shift from the market situation, whereas renewables were, let's say, 10 years ago in an unfinished symphony, playing the unfinished symphony orchestra, they're now becoming the modern jazz, because this is now really a market-driven approach that we will see. On the contrary, the conventionals, they were modern jazz 10 years ago. I think in the future they will become unfinished symphony, and they really depend on some kind of capacity mechanisms in order to keep them on the market.
Okay, thank you for that. Ingrid, if you look on the future of Nord Pool, let's say 5-10 years, what countries are part of Nord Pool at that time, in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, definitely our home countries today. Nordic market, Baltic market, UK. Next year, hopefully, we start to offer our services in Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Austria, Poland, hopefully. So in 5 years, we are looking also at other countries in south of Europe. Why not? Yeah.
So would you say that Nord Pool, which is the best power market in Europe, would you
Thank
agree? That this will be or become the main model for European power markets?
I hope so. I hope so.
And what do you hope so, or do you like? What kind of certainty would you say is attached to this hope?
Yeah, you never know what will happen in Europe. So we are now all the power exchanges. Somehow we have very not very good positions because we need to cooperate with others, but at the same time we are competitors. So in UK we are already, there is 2 power exchanges who are really managing the market. Next year this will be in Europe, in everywhere. So we are trying to find out what does it mean based on the knowledge we have from UK today. Thanks to regulation which is really harmonized, at least on the level we need today, we can expand our services in other markets. So, yeah.
Okay. Let's move to our Baltic utilities. Are you happy with the Nord Pool market model, or what would you change? And let's start with Hando.
Of course, I'm happy. So I was welcoming it myself to Baltics, and I think that we are actually lucky here that we have something to copy-paste to Baltics, which has been working so well for the Nordics. And another important thing is that we need to understand why it has been serving so well for Nordics. And this is also for continental Europe very important to understand how this model has been working well for Nordics, and not to make very easy conclusions like you have a Norwegian hydro, you don't have problems, this will never work for continental Europe. This is not correct. And we have to understand that why, for instance, Sweden is divided into 4 bidding areas. Everybody in continental Europe should take a moment to read through this commission hearing about the Danish claim against Sweden, old friends, Denmark and Sweden, for claiming in a European Commission that Sweden has to be split into the bidding areas, and it was done according to the request from the Commission. Today, we say that this is still issue internal concessions, I mean, in Sweden, but it is never issue in Germany. This is very interesting conclusion, and here we have to say that this business is quite a lot physics driven. So we can't ignore the facts that physics, meaning that if the heavily invested renewable energy in north of Germany would be placed into the similar conditions like Sweden into splitting according to concession the bidding areas, then the storage investment in south of Germany would have a totally different meaning. You should not even need to subsidize it. It would have incentive enough from the market. This is just one example. Let's take another one. We are here in Baltics, Sweden, Finland. We are more or less in a one price area at the moment, so that prices are quite similar. And then in Estonia, our peak demand, not even now because it's not so cold, but it's close to 1,500 megawatts. We have a total available to the market capacities with Russia from Finland 1,400 megawatts, and from Lithuania another 1,400 megawatts, almost 3,000 megawatts. This 3,000 megawatts is in use, but this is in use against the market incentive. So whenever we have off-peak hours, meaning that we have a bottom of the prices, then this is full in, and when we have a peak, then this is disappearing. And this is just due to the simple fact that Russia has a different market system. This is not the power, but this is capacity plus power. And it comes to our market against any our market logic, and we are fine with this. Nobody, not the regulators, not the ministers, not the market operator, nobody has a idea. So this works double Estonian peak capacity against our market. This is one example. Then let's take the next one. We had new interconnections, meaning Nordpolt, which is a very good thing. I think it's really integrates us much better to the Nordic area. And we had the Litpol cable, which integrates us to Poland, which is another big market area. And obviously, any market participant expectation was that those cables are coming fully to the market use. What we see with Polish cable is Nordpolt, as much as it works, it is to the market use, and this is very good. But the Litpol link is to the market use only as much as Polish counterpart wants it to be on the market use. Basically, this works some hours in one direction, some hours in another direction. There is no physical limitation. This is just somebody's decision. So this was unexpected for the market. So that if we are making long-term prognosis, forecast scenarios, we couldn't take it into consideration. And those are quite the simple things, basic things. If we can fix those, I think the current market model will work very fine.
Darius, you have the front row seat to the situation with Poland. How does it influence your everyday work?
Well, obviously, there is something happening that is not easy to explain, or it could be easily explained, but this explanation does not coincide with the concept of the market. So, and this has been happening not only Litpolink, but also the Swedbalt, which is the Swedish Polish interconnection. Has been working for many years on the same regime, which basically protects the Polish internal market from the market, which doesn't make sense. But if we go back and we look at the concept of the market, what is necessary for the market to function? First is I guess the most important is physical interconnection, so power links for the international markets to work together. Second is platform. Nord Pool is one of the platforms. And the third is common rules. Rules of the game that are being exercised on the same sort of, the same set of rules. So if we have physical interconnections, they might be limiting the capacity exchange, then it creates a bottlenecks and change different price zones, but still it is possible to understand. The platform, Nord Pool is a very good platform, but the platform is not the most important thing. I think in the future, even in our region, a few platforms might be competing. And it might become a very sort of common used tool in different markets with different platforms. And then the third one is common rules. This is where we are struggling heavily. Because this is exactly the Litpolink situation. Why? Different rules. The Russian situation, why? Different rules. Different approach towards the market. I say this is a good market, but I only want it for me, and I don't want it for others. This is different rules. Why it worked in Scandinavia? Because, I don't know why, but those people like to have common rules. And look, if they even managed to have the same green certificate scheme, which is unique. It is a unique thing across the different countries. So it means that they can function mentally in a single set of rules, and maybe it's a historical heritage, maybe it's a character, maybe it's different things, mentality of the people. But if we don't say first we need to obey same rules, this will never work. And look at the regulators. Yeah? Hando sent a letter to our regulator regarding the Litpolink, if I am correct, right? What answer did you get?
Hunter, you don't
The
want to
answer
go?
was mainly, don't ask me this. This is not a nice
The answer
question.
is that I'm a Russian agent.
So, I mean, how many years are we talking about the third country trading?
Okay, we will get back to the question, how can we get common rules? But first, let's listen the German experience with the Polish border, where Germany is actually, in my opinion, creating a lot of the problems because you don't have many price areas. And how would you comment that? Why does Germany have only one price area?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite simple that we have one price area because it's a strong political will to have one price area. I mean, you should remember that we are a country that was reunified. And so it's now really difficult to establish now new borders within one country without hurting some older feelings. So this is really one strong movement that we have one price region. Definitely, of course, this whole German energy transition, it wouldn't have been possible with the help of our neighbors, also with the help of the Netherlands or with the help of the Polish guys who are taking a lot of electricity at some stage of time when there's a strong oversupply in northern Germany. I can also perfectly understand the reaction of our neighbors that they introduce phase shifters on the border in order to sort the grid situation in the country out. It's also a basic problem within Germany, and this is also a problem of public acceptance that we are not able to build cables within our country and to improve the grid situation within our country. I mean, there's one strong grid that should be planned between northern Germany and southern Germany. I think it's now in the 18th year of the process to become approval. And this is not because our bureaucrats are so over-skeptical, but it's because of missing social acceptance. That's really a strong difficulty that we have.
So you're saying that it's easier to get the lines built than get the price zones implemented in Germany?
That's really tough. I would say in the end it will become easier to introduce the price zones, but I think as long as any politician can avoid to do this kind of situation, he will try to avoid it. Yeah.
I will in a second open up the floor to questions, but I will just mark what topics I still want to cover with you guys. The first one being, of course, the future of energy-only market. Do we see that this will be the winning case, or will we have capacity mechanism or capacity markets as an addition to that? And then I would also like to cover the issue of can we trust our neighbors, which was brought up in the previous discussions. But I would like to get the mic to Brigitta and to ask your opinion on the discussion so far, and maybe you have some good insights into the discussion.
Thank you very much. Well, I agree, and just as I started off, it's really very much about integration, and that we need to have a planning that is more regional. And I think it was good putting up also and get an explanation from also the Germany where the problem is really, how to get this to work better. But going into the more energy market, if that will, or energy-only market, if that will survive, I think, as I stated, I think we need more markets and not less. And I think we should really, I was in a way struggle to get the market work, and not to be reluctant and say that, okay, because I think it's so easy to call for money. And but then if we start to have a capacity market, I think it's impossible to go to step back. And so for us as a company, Fortum, I believe that we should try to work. And then of course, then I would like to hear from also the panel. Yeah. So where do you stand? I know there's a different discussion in Germany, for instance, and also it's interesting to hear, and I think we can align what is happening also in the Baltics.
Okay. So Stefan, maybe we'll start with you and on the question of energy-only market versus capacity market.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, of course, I can be quite relaxed on this because we don't have any kind of conventional power plant, so we could be quite easy on this. I think a year ago we had a strong opinion there. And perhaps I can reflect a little bit on this. I mean, for us as a company, and because you also asked where our earning potentials in the future, flexibility will be one key ingredient to the future market design that we see in Europe. And flexibility will not only come from power plants, but also from demand response, from storage. So one key ingredient definitely to this kind of market system that we have is also to include and to take the same level on all kind of flexibility that we have on the market, not just on power generation, but of course also on power generation. A few years ago, we were quite skeptical on capacity mechanisms, and we thought it would be a very good idea to have only energy-only markets when we still had some conventional power plants. After a while, we had a rethought about these kind of considerations, and then we had two basic arguments against the energy-only market. First, this kind of energy-only market will only work if the scarcity price signals are really allowed to enter to the market. We have some interesting experiences that we come to the conclusion, okay, as soon as the price on Nord Pool or on EEX will be in the area of 5,000 euros per megawatt hour, there might be a political innovation introducing price caps, which is the most stupid thing you can do in this case, but doing something most stupid is nothing that is impossible, unfortunately. So we would say, okay, there is a certain likelihood that this will occur, and then the whole energy-only market will not fly, unfortunately. Secondly, to have these price signals is also very unpredictable when they will take place. So if you're building now a new gas-fired power station, CCGT, and you say, okay, I hope that in the next year this kind of price spike will occur, this is a bet on the future. It can also happen that in the next 10 years it will not occur, but in the 11th year, and then it's really difficult to refinance your power plant. So the risk is extremely high. And for this reason, we thought it might be better to have some kind of capacity mechanism. This can also be done in a quite competitive way by using auctions. So it's not just giving money to the people. It should be some kind of competitive element in it, definitely. But we are, in the end, not really convinced that the energy-only market alone will do it, unfortunately.
Ingrid, picking up on what Stefan said, that to me, the whole idea behind the Nord Pool and the energy-only market is that the prices need to go to this 3,000, 5,000 euros per megawatt hour to get the companies investing. But then you have the politicians who see that even if prices are 200, that this is too high. So can the energy-only market work?
For Nord Pool, I think what is most important, that even in future, there is something in parallel with energy-only market, but still the energy is sold and bought via our platform. I think this is important. So for the investments, there might be some mechanism, but please, once again, please don't kill the market. Please don't take this liquidity out from the market. I think this is most important. In Nordic countries, also in some of the continental European countries, we have today already some capacity mechanism. So TSOs, to secure the security of supply, they are already buying some reserves capacities from the generators today. So, and those generators and those units are out of the market. So this is something we need to really follow very carefully, that still this energy is on the market.
Hando, when I have spoken to you before about this issue, you have always advocated the idea that we have this one market, let's fix this one and don't create any other mechanisms in addition to it. Would you still stick to this?
Yeah, we can theoretically create more markets than one. We can create a capacity market, we can create a flexibility market, and probably we can invent something more even. But I think that first of all, we have to make sure that we are, our religion is market driven. So that if we believe on the market, then it makes sense to create markets. Otherwise, we should go back to the regulated market or regulated energy industry. And maybe this is not bad, even if we cannot really change our religion and say that we are believing on the markets and market is giving really the incentives for investments and so on. And here, I think that if we will not fix the easy ones on the power-only market currently what we have, then even capacity market will not help. Then certainly sooner or later we will happen to be back on the regulated environment. However, we call it the regulated environment or not, but we are going back there because markets will have no money. Actually, incentives are coming somewhere else. The CEOs of utilities, they are spending more in a political corridors than somewhere else because their money is coming from there, not from the markets, with the regulators, with the commission, somebody else, because their money is coming from there, not from the market, so that nobody cares about the market. And this is dangerous. So I mean, in this case, even capacity market doesn't help because actually then we are back in a regulated environment. And what I want to say that if there would be a proper bidding areas, where the concession is very well aligned and any generator will have the same rules on the market. What I mean here is that, let's say wind generators, as they are appearing more and more, they would have an obligation to balance. They would be a balance responsible, or they would have a same incentive to act, let's say, if the prices are negative, because nobody cares, they have a subsidy. They can generate more even if the power price is negative. This doesn't belong to the logic of the power-only market. If we fix those ones, then this power-only market can fly very well. If we will not, then we can create another market, third market, maybe fourth even, but sooner or later we are back on the regulated environment.
So Talios, are we, or is Lithuania moving to a regulated market or not?
I think to an extent which more or less every country is. I mean, when we talk about capacity markets, we are talking about on European level, we are talking about should we have a single capacity market architecture in Europe. Effectively, every country, pretty much every country in Europe has a sort of capacity market or a policy-driven market, market which cannot be called a market, and I agree with Hando that you should call things what they are. And I don't see a way out of that because it's too deep. You know, when you talk to investors who have invested into fixed feed-in tariff wind farms, you can see that they will fight for their right to make money. When you talk to the farmers that have put the PVs on their new built sheds, I don't know used for what, but for PVs, that's for sure, they will fight for their right to keep that feed-in tariff that they have, and it's their right. And if we go to the consumer, which I like this aspect, and I think this is what we should be thinking about, the innovation coming from the client's side, from the consumer side, should I say prosumer's side, they will require a different kind of market design. And as far as I know, this should not be looking as an energy-only market, because this will be different product that the client will be requiring from the market, from the DSO, first of all, not from this major international market, but from the quite local. So we will have two types of market. One will be large scale, one will be small scale, and the small scale will be functioning according completely different rules. And there the transactions will be taking place in real time, right? Then the big scale, I don't know, because I think it's quite optimistic to hope that we will introduce a single market design in Europe. I think it's quite optimistic, because it hasn't happened much in that sphere over the last 10 years, as far as I remember. So there will be national markets, and it's quite obvious that this will be a market of different products. It will be flexibility, backup, reserve, spinning reserve. I mean, you can name it, a lot of things there. How to accumulate them towards one single denominator, for me, hard to comprehend. Although the idea of the energy-only market, it sounds good. And the idea of the market, it sounds good. But practically, I think it's quite impossible.
Hando, I have to come back to you, because listening to Darius and you, I think there's like a contradiction. You believe that we can do it?
I mean, this is actually a quote from Jukka Ruusunen, who is quite, for me, a prominent opinion leader in Nordics, and he has been for me as a market front speaker for many years. And he said that today we are at age, so we either go for the market or we go back to the regulated energy environment. We can't continue like this. We can't be on between. So and this is very clear. And if we will not go for the market, then we are a hard rock. And this is very, very well described. This was very well described by Christoph today. What will be the future then if we will go to the hard rock? Because then we can have our national markets, our regional markets, but we will never have a European power market. And I give you just one example or a few examples just to think about the future, what it could be. Let's say we have certainly more and more electric vehicles, electric cars. We are driving electric car, we are arriving home from our office at the evening at 6 or 7, at 8, depends how long is our business day. And then we have a dilemma, either to charge it when we reach the home, or we will charge it on the off-peak hour after the midnight. It's easy, because you have just the switch to put it either immediately or after the midnight. And the idea of the future system is that you will do it after the midnight, because you will help to balance the system out. And you will have incentive because the price is much cheaper after the midnight. But if I will not have a properly incentive from the wholesale market, if we will not have a smart grid and so on, then certainly I will start to charge it when I reach home. And it will not help the system, it will not give any flexibility, demand flexibility to the market and so on. And actually we will not benefit from the development of technology. And at the same time, also, the Tesla battery is a nice thing, But the hydro storage, 2,500 megawatt hydro storage in Switzerland is much more efficient today, and I think for many, many years to come. Tesla batteries are already in use at homes, but Swiss hydro pumping storage is standing idle because market design doesn't give any incentive to run this great asset in Switzerland. And we can continue. The gas power stations, which are very good to cut the peaks, are standing idle. They are modern stations. Gas price is very low. They are not used because market doesn't function. And very soon they will either dismantle those stations or do something else because it doesn't give any incentive to keep them alive.
Yeah, Darius, you wanted to remark.
Just to add on the electric vehicle, which is very attractive idea, I think we can leapfrog there and not think in an old-fashioned way, but think that we will not even have to think when it charges. It will have a smart system that will optimize the charging. And one might be charging and another might be discharging at the same time if the whole micro market works. And if there is another family which has a battery in the basement and is off for vacation and wants to sell its accumulated electricity to the grid at this moment. I mean, this is, I think, the completely new market design on a microgrid level. And I think it is coming. Why it is coming? Because to take electricity from the hydro plant in Switzerland or from the offshore wind park in northern Germany to the southern Germany is a challenge. It is even a technical challenge, a public acceptance challenge, environmental challenge, policy challenge, all different kind of challenges. And for someone in Munich to have a microgrid and a Tesla and Powerwall and solar PV is fun. And they are ready to pay extra for that.
Okay, let's turn to the audience. Do any of you have any questions? Einari, you...
Well, thank you for the great panel here. Just to challenge you even more, from the context of Christoph's presentation, speaking about the more renewables coming to the market with zero marginal cost. What will imply in the future in this context is that we will have more and more hours with close to zero prices in energy. That means in turn that, well, all these platforms like Nord Pool Spot and all the traders will have to take a new reality that energy might not be the business that brings in money, and they have to find some new business models. How would you reflect on that? How would you see actually the transition in renewables and to some extent storage as well that would imply on the influence the prices on the electricity markets?
And to whom?
Well, could actually. I would like to start with Ingrid, and then the reflections from the other ones as well.
Okay, please, Ingrid.
Okay, thank you, Einari. I think, as you said, for Nord Pool, definitely the platform stays as it is, because the market price is still, the reference price is still needed. So we are calculating the price is minus or plus, it doesn't matter for us. But I said this already, it might be that at least from some point we are just starting to lose liquidity. And this is not due to the wind parks or some other different generation, but this is due to the cross-border capacities. So I am afraid a bit, knowing a bit more from the TSO life. I was previously working at TSO, so I just am afraid that TSOs, just to secure the market and the system, they are reserving the capacity from the market, and this capacity is out. So it might be the question of liquidity. If there is less liquidity, then there's the question of the trust to the market prices, etc. So it goes like this.
Stefan, would you care to comment?
Yeah, I think, I mean, part of the answer, as I indicated already, would be that there will be a shift from a day ahead to an intraday market. It might even be the case that the financial market look very differently to the case that we have today, because if you can expect zero marginal cost all over the year, then there's not much need for financial hedging, but the real hedging and the real currency in the future will be flexibility. And there's not only generation, the big part, but also the consumer with a quite strong input on this. A second point where you can try to monetize some kind of the renewable production in the future will be to use it not only for the typical uses that we have today for electricity, but also for the transport sector and for the heating sector. And I think here we will find perhaps some counter or some other competitor with the gas price or with some other prices, because in the end, to decarbonize the transport and the heating sector, it's definitely only possible with all the kind of renewable power that we have, and renewable electricity will play a major role here. And so this might also lead to some kind of new pricing mechanism here, but more based from the retail aspect of the pricing and less perhaps on a wholesale market. In the end, you can perhaps boil it up to a wholesale market, but I think in the end it will be quite strongly coupled to all the retail prices that we see on the various goods.
Darius, please.
And I think good point to continue there. Let's ask ourselves questions. How will the retail pricing look like? And I think telecom is telling us how it will look like. People will be paying to be connected, and the kilowatt hour might disappear as a concept. So service is a new keyword for the retail market, not a product, not electrons, not molecules, but people like to have service, light, heat, warmth, comfort, whatever. And this is, I'm sorry to say that, I'm sorry to say that to myself, but we need to catch up because this is changing already today. Then this will move towards the wholesale, I think. And I don't, I mean, no one can tell what will happen, but one of the versions that might be that we will have much more action on the micro level, decentralized, with the small-scale renewables being very strong player, and small-scale storage, or even district-scale storage, that will still, I mean, I think it will happen some years in the future. And then the wholesale markets as such will be more seen as a, some reserve power plants and the TSO who is providing a service to the producers, prosumers of the backup and regulation, and having his reserve plants, even owned sometimes, as it is here in Estonia, that they have a gas-fired reserve plant too, I think. So, I mean, this might be the concept.
Hando?
Yeah, I think that one thing we have to remember here is that renewables, at least not today, is not a cheap thing to have. It's a quite expensive luxury. I think maybe you want to say how much German consumers have been paying over the last 10 years about the Energiewende.
It's still 20 billions per year, but this was for the old school renewables. I mean, for the new ones, they are somewhat cheaper. And the other thing is, for most of the consumers, if they really make the comparison, they're not using the wholesale market price, but the retail power price. And with all the taxes and with all the additional regulated fees, it's a different calculation. That's not sustainable, of course.
Let's make it very, very simple. So in last 10 years, German consumers have been paying 100 billion euros extra on their energy bills. 100 billion euros. Ladies and gentlemen, this is lots of money. So we have to understand that this cannot be afforded to many nations in Europe. Probably not for Estonians. And what I want to say that Germans have been taking quite brave step to be like a front runners bring those technologies to the market, but they have paid a very, very high price. We don't know what will be the technology which will be competitive in 5 or 10 years, but I think that many big changes ahead, like Darius told, so this is for sure. But we have to be kind of balanced out that do we want to pay such a huge bills, or we are going stepwise together with technology, and finally, anyway, the most competitive technology will win, and we will be there. We just need to create the conditions for those technologies to compete on a fair basis. Otherwise, it will be very, very expensive for the society. And this is the only thing. And here in Estonia, we have to be a little bit more pragmatic, because we don't have this health like Germany. So that if we would like to repeat the same thing, then I think that we will not survive.
Are there any more questions from the audience? Or if not, then I will take the word Energiewende that you used, and I will turn to Stefan. And the latest news about Energiewende in Germany is that Germany will exit from coal by 2020 something.
Yeah.
Is it true? Does coal also mean lignite and the brown coal and everything?
Yeah.
Or
I mean, in the end, it should also mean lignite. I mean, I wouldn't bet now on the exact year. This is something to discuss, but the general tendency to have a phase out also of coal is quite clear. There's of course some problem with the labor forces, because much of these lignite is of course produced in parts of Germany where the economic situation is not too good and not really convincing. And so there is some difficulties to offer here some kind of alternative jobs to the people when they're losing their lignite mining job. This is certainly a problem, and so we will see here really a strong battle between the 2 points. But the general tendency to get out of coal and to reduce the carbon footprint of the electricity generation is quite strong. So that's really a strong point here.
do you also have regulation in place how to make this kind of exit happen? Like the companies need to be compensated for their power plants and...
Yeah, there's some kind of hidden regulation, which is a so-called winter reserve, that a few of the older coal-fired power stations, they are promised not to produce any longer. But they also said, okay, we will not shut down the plant completely, but we will keep it alive in some sense. And so in case there's a strong winter, we can use the power and the generation from this. And for this service, you get some kind of a fee. So it's some kind of hidden capacity mechanism that we have there in the system. But whether this will be some kind of role model for the next power plants to be shut down, that's open to discuss. Yeah.
Okay. And this coal exit is being like brought out some 15, 20 years, no less.
It's
8
less.
years before it will happen.
Yeah.
Okay, and do you think like 8 years is enough time in a system as inert as electricity markets, or should we have longer lead times in this kind of decisions?
This depends strongly on the situation that we have. I mean, I think we still rely a lot on our neighbors, that they will deliver. In case we have some scarcity in the German system, then we hope that the Polish and the French will deliver. This might become true. This might also lead to some difficulties. But at least as long as we have quite substantial generation also in our neighboring countries, we can be quite positive and optimistic on this. Yeah. And that's also the tricky part when we come back to this European capacity mechanism. It's really the tricky part to find out what your neighbors are doing with regards to the capacity in their country. Yeah.
Do we have some questions? Yes, please. Please wait for the microphone.
I have a question about the hydrogen era.
Mm-hmm.
So all over the world, all over Europe, we have good examples of storing electricity, and in particular in Germany, and in Estonia too already. We have started to build the first hydrogen filling station.
Mm-hmm.
I would be keen to know, what do you think in the perspective of 2020, 2030, which is just tomorrow? What is your perspective about the future development of hydrogen energy in context of accumulation in the form of hydrogen, electricity accumulation in the form of hydrogen. Thanks.
Okay, firstly, in my point of view, it's one of the excellent answers that we have to this kind of long-term storage. Because what we experience, at least in the northwestern part of Europe, is also that we have 2 weeks without wind and 2 weeks in the winter where the PV production is also quite low. So for this winter situation, we would really be very interested and very in demand of some kind of long-term storage where we can produce for 2 weeks electricity. And for this case, hydrogen stored as a methane by a methanization process could be the ideal source. The problem that we have with hydrogen is more on an economic base, we have to admit, because in the end, you are using an apparatus that is really demanding full load hours of 8,000 hours per year, and you operate it for 300, 400 or 500 hours a year. That is the specific costs to produce hydrogen become extremely high. So it's just an economic case that is currently not really too good. From the technology perspective, I would say it's at the moment the only source that we have to cover the long-term security of supply.
Every expensive thing wants to be cheap.
Yeah, and sometimes if you're willing to pay the price, I mean, in Germany we are willing to pay any price, as we just heard. This might become an interesting source for us, yeah, definitely.
Hando, please.
The hydrogen is interesting thing because in Estonia we have a lab test done probably in Technical University that hydrogen treatment of the oil shale might give us oil as well. So that we should not even heat the oil to get oil shale to get the oil out, but hydrogen treatment technically, theoretically, and even practically is possible. Again, the economical incentive must be there, so that industrially it's expensive, but and if we have reached this, then we have no emissions and we can use oil shale and produce oil without any emissions. So, and it is possible, so that hydrogen has a meaning in a different way, so that we will see how this hydrogen will help us in the future.
Darius.
Just, it's always fun to talk about different technologies, but I would say let's not make a mistake that has been made before, that we suddenly treat it as a beauty contest, that one technology is more beautiful than another. And then you create a subsidy towards a specific technology, and then you have, a subsidy tourism where the most sunny state in Europe becomes somewhere in the north, because the feed-in tariff is the best there. I would say let's ask what does the client or the market in this case need. Yeah? If it needs a long-term storage, let's open up the doors for the long-term storage solutions, whichever is the best and the best on the economic sense, sufficient technologically for what you need, but then the cheapest, I guess. And the same, I think, would apply for renewables. If we need zero CO2, then let's call it zero CO2, but not call it wind or solar. And this is coming back to the ETS system, right? When we said, let's solve the problem of pollution by, benefiting to a specific technology. And then suddenly the benefit, the feed-in tariff became the first thing, and then the pollution became somewhere else. And then next to the wind, then we have coal, right? So this is a dangerous road to go. I'm fully for giving money for research for new technologies. This is a completely different thing, but not solving it with the help of the market, so-called policy. And just one very short remark about the Energiewende. I think it's a very good example of a strategic decision and a strategic discipline. Because if the public acceptance for nuclear was low, then there was a decision made and supported by the public. For us, it's a bit difficult to understand because we don't have such a good alignment, right? So, but if you look at the Baltic experience and especially Lithuanian experience, we had an Energiewende also in 2004 and 2010 when we closed 2 nuclear reactors, and this was not a 10-20% of our production. This was 80% of our production on a Baltic scale. So this was huge Energiewende. The only difference is that we didn't make it the decision ourselves. And we had some support from you, from other countries financially. but then it was an Energiewende.
Yeah. Ando, you also wanted to
Yeah,
comment?
I just want to put it into the context in this way that if we take a current hydro balance in Sweden and Norway and compare it to the average, then this is below of average about 13-15 terawatt hours, which is equal to double Estonian yearly consumption. So this is the context. But our Norwegian colleagues always said that if there will be need and market incentive, we can pump it back and we can store it for 3 or 5 years because our fjords are huge. So and this is all unused potential there. So that this is the context in our case, and then we have to think that really how those technologies are competing with some alternatives.
It was just also to comment on this Norwegian hydro storage, because there was a famous study in Germany in 2011 before the Fukushima thing happened, and there was also this thing that we can reach in Germany 100% renewables, and we just have to use the Norwegian pump hydro stations. Problem number one was there is no pump hydro in Norwegian, they just have river run hydro. Problem number two is the Germans didn't ask the Norwegians whether they would cooperate on this, but they were just assuming that this will be the case. Problem number three, for this case I just mentioned, when we have these 2 weeks in northwestern Europe with really low wind and low solar radiation, the demand needed in Germany from these pump hydro stations would be 90 gigawatts, 90,000 megawatts. And you need this also as cable via the North Sea. And I don't have any problems to imagine that we have so many cables through the North Sea, but when I see these 20 pylons coming out of the sea and 20 grid connections will go through Germany, I would expect some interesting debate about social acceptance, and so all these kind of ideas would vanish in a haze. Yeah. So it's really difficult. From a figure point of view, you have this kind of storage, but to use this kind of storage is really easier said than done, yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was meaning more Estonian perspective. So we don't change this
1.5
picture a lot with
gigawatt.
our 8 terawatt hour of yearly consumption.